No, when it comes to Kendrick Lamar in the game, things have gotten way more tense than anyone expected. And now that the truth is finally coming out, people are realizing that after the game tried to twist Kendrick's name, Kendrick and his circle are completely done with him. This situation is a lot heavier than most fans ever imagined. And now that we've gotten the clearest proof yet that Kendrick has zero respect left for the game, you can really see how one West Coast artist crossed the line and made it obvious that Kendrick's whole camp isn't holding back anymore. They're letting everybody know exactly how they feel about him, and the energy is icy. So here's the real context behind how this mess even started. Everything kicked off when the game sat down for an interview with Big Boy. And while he was talking, he brought up the first time he met Kendrick Lamar, and then he tried to claim he wanted to sign Kendrick back in the day. I'm gonna play the moment he starts talking about it because it says a lot. And I was always asking, Now obviously I couldn't show the full clip, but trust me, there's a lot more back and forth where the game tries to make it sound like he discovered Kendrick.
I think my, 2 cents, I was a little bit, ahead of the curve than from where they were. And I was always asking, Chop, I was like, yo, let me get it, let me get that. He was just like, no.
Almost like he's putting himself in the same lane as when someone says LeBron transformed every player he ever touched. The way he talked made it seem like he wanted credit for something he didn't actually build. And the tone he used, it felt like he was being a bit condescending, almost like he was trying to subliminally talk down on Kendrick instead of just giving him genuine respect. It rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, especially because Kendrick never asked him for anything in the first place. This whole conversation is where the tension really started blowing up, because in the full clip, the game keeps referring to Kendrick as, and I quote, a funny little guy. And even when he talks about how Kendrick grew up compared to the lifestyle he lived, the way he says it feels like he's implying Kendrick is somehow lesser or not as tough as him, which is a strange angle to take in the first place. It came off like he was trying to boost himself while downplaying Kendrick, and fans instantly picked up on that energy. But at the end of the day, this is the game in 2025. Nobody's shocked anymore. And the wild part is that while he was telling this story, he tried to make it seem like he always recognized Kendrick's potential to become one of the greatest artists we've ever seen. He claimed he was talking to Top Dog, trying to get Kendrick to sign under him so he could mentor him and turn him into the next superstar. That's the image he was pushing during the interview. Now, normally people would just debate this back and forth online. But this time, things went way further because Kendrick Lamar's camp actually responded directly to the game's claims. And not just one person, 2 different people spoke out, which tells you how strongly they felt about clearing this up. The first person who fired back is someone very important. 2T's, Kendrick's longtime bodyguard. For anyone who doesn't know him, he's not just security, he's a close friend who's been with Kendrick for years, standing beside him through almost his entire career. And what 2T's said was simple but powerful. He basically let everyone know that the game is faking. He didn't hold back, and that one statement already shifted the whole conversation, and he made it crystal clear that the game never wanted to sign Kendrick at all. He even used a bunch of exclamation marks to drive the point home. And that alone tells you how strongly Kendrick's people feel about this. When Kendrick Lamar's own bodyguard steps out publicly and calls the game's story a straight-up lie, it exposes a serious disconnect between what the game is claiming and what really happened. But that wasn't the end of it, not even close. Another one of Kendrick's close friends, someone who's been with him since day one and is literally on the TPAB cover, also responded to the game. And what he said was even harsher. He claimed the game just lies for attention. Hearing that from someone who is cemented in Kendrick's legacy shows exactly how deep this issue goes. And if anyone thought they were exaggerating, 2T's came back again and doubled down, saying he's not doing any faking this year. That message hit hard because this isn't coming from random people online.
The first time I met Kendrick was a long time ago. I don't even know if he'll remember. He was going to the Yet Center in Compton, and as part of a probationary program, I had to go be a big brother at this Yet Center, and me and my homie Tato,
getting hours signed off, hell yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't Kendrick's big brother, but he used to come in there and he was real young, man, and he was just always charismatic, always good with the words, man, and just a, funny little guy. I don't even know if he remembers that. And so when I had, and we grew up like across the street and around the corner from each other. But I gang bang hard, and Dot, he a non-affiliate. He Compton, and he ain't no punk either.
Right.
So and everybody from the hood that don't bang still is from the hood.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I would be going in the beginning of my career. I'd be going by Top Dog's house, and just helping him with J-Rock stuff and lending my, 2 cents, since I was a little bit, ahead of the curve than from where they were. And I was always asking Top, I was like, let me get Dot.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, no. And so he knew what he was. I knew what he was. J-Rock, when I took J-Rock on tour, Dot was hype man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I asked Top again at my house in Glendale. I was like, let me get Dot. He was like, nah. But he was like, what if we piece up TDE? And I was like, man, I got Black Wall Street. I'm good. Like, I want you to do
So
your
when you
thing.
say let me get Dot, are you talking about let me get him as an artist or as a feature?
Let me get him as an artist.
Right.
Because I already knew what he was gonna be. And nobody didn't understand it yet except everybody that was around Top and TDE. They knew. And I knew. And at first, everybody was saying how he rapped too fast and it was going around the hood and all of that, right? And I was just like, y'all tripping. This is him. So when they was doing, when he dropped Section 80 and they was doing the thing downtown, Top hit me. He was like, can you come up here? We, Dog is up here, Dre is up here, Corrupt up here. Can you come down here? So I got in my car. I drove down there and yeah, man.
This is coming from individuals who have been beside Kendrick his entire journey, from the early days all the way to global success. When people who've been this close to Kendrick for so long talk about the game like this, it becomes obvious what's really going on. They're not holding back and they're not entertaining any stories that don't match the truth they lived through. And now it's impossible to ignore. Kendrick Lamar's camp clearly does not vibe with the game anymore, and whatever respect they once had is completely gone. When you really break down this whole situation, the simplest way to put it is this: they lost all respect for him, and they're making sure everyone knows exactly why. Because the way Kendrick's people are talking about the game shows something interesting. They're not even angry at this point. They're treating him like some cartoon-style character who keeps tripping over his own storyline, always saying wild things and pushing narratives that don't make sense to anyone. It's almost like they see him as someone who keeps creating his own problems by telling stories nobody asked for. And honestly, when you look at everything Kendrick has dealt with over the years, the different rap tensions, the moments where people tried to test him, this situation with the game might be the most complicated one. Because if we go back in time, the history between them wasn't negative at all. When Kendrick was coming up and the game was still a major figure in hip-hop, everything seemed solid between them. Back in the early 2000s, their relationship looked respectful. On the game's 2011 Red album, Kendrick delivered one of his strongest early features on The City, a track fans still talk about today. And just a year later, in 2012, Kendrick appeared on the game's next album again, showing that they were aligned musically and personally during that era. Then by the time Kendrick transformed into a full-on superstar, he even popped up on the documentary too. So the connection between them was real, and it showed that, at least back then, there was genuine respect flowing both ways. In terms of West Coast rap, the game carried the torch through the 2000s, holding down the region when it needed a strong voice. And in the 2010s, Kendrick picked that torch up and ran with it, becoming the next face of the coast. That's why this whole situation feels so strange. It's not like they started as rivals. They actually came from the same lineage, but somewhere along the way, things shifted in a way nobody expected. Their partnership made perfect sense back then, and it really did make the West Coast stronger as a whole. That's why seeing Kendrick's people talk about the game like this hits different, because at the end of the day, they feel like the game forced their hand. He put them in a position where they had no choice but to speak up. And honestly, it's sad in its own way. Just like others who fell out with Kendrick as his career kept rising, the game ended up turning against him once Kendrick reached a level that most artists never touch. And that's where the tension really started growing. The moment Kendrick surpassed them without losing his integrity, without doing anything messy or embarrassing, the energy shifted. Meanwhile, a lot of rappers, especially the game, can't say the same, and that contrast seems to bother them more than they'll ever admit. When you look at the full story of Kendrick and the game, it becomes clear that the game backed himself into a corner. There's nothing he can really do now to reverse it. Kendrick's inner circle speaking on him so openly and calling him a lying clout chaser isn't just showing us that Kendrick doesn't like him. It shows that Kendrick truly doesn't believe the game will ever come to a place where real respect can exist again. And it doesn't stop there. It also shows that Kendrick doesn't think there's any chance of fixing things for the sake of the West Coast either. In his eyes, that ship has sailed completely. And when you remember everything Kendrick has done for the West Coast, from putting so many artists on during the Good Kid, M.A. AIDS City era, to the energy and unity he brought during the pop-out event where West Coast culture was showcased on a level we've never witnessed before, it becomes even clearer why this situation stands out. Kendrick has consistently lifted the coast, celebrated the coast, and represented the coast in a way that pushed the whole region forward. So for things to reach this point with the game, it shows the divide is real deep and not going anywhere. It's important to understand that Kendrick doesn't just love rap. He loves where he's from and everything hip-hop means to the West Coast. He moves like someone who wants to represent the culture the right way, not just for his own success, but for everyone around him who deserves a shot too. And when a person with that much pride and dedication reaches a point where he and his people are openly calling the game pathetic, it tells you everything. It shows Kendrick has completely lost hope that the version of the game who dropped those classic albums in the 2000s and early 2000s will ever return. Kendrick has seen the absolute worst side of him, and there's probably a lot more behind the scenes that the public hasn't heard yet. But if we break down why Kendrick has finally turned on the game and why he'll never try to fix things, the truth is simple. The only person the game can point the finger at is himself. Over the last few years, he's acted like a walking circus, messing up his own image while trying to pull others down with him. Instead of moving with dignity, he's constantly created drama that hurts not just himself and his legacy, but the entire West Coast hip-hop scene. And what makes it even worse is that he's disrespected the same people who helped build him. People seem to forget that Dr. Dre is the reason the game even became the game in the first place. Dr. Dre didn't just hand him the West Coast torch, he crafted him into a real rap superstar at a time when the region desperately needed a voice. Albums like The Documentary and everything Dre built around that era gave the game the platform he needed to become iconic. And yet, somehow, the game decided to turn around and attack Dre's legacy. If you think back to 2022, the game went on an entire press run trying to downplay Dre's influence and pretend Dre wasn't a major part of his rise. Everyone in the culture knew that wasn't true. Dre's impact speaks for itself, and trying to rewrite that history was reckless. Seeing someone bite the hand that helped them is already wild, but watching the game try to rewrite the legacy of one of the most respected producers in music, that's the type of move that makes people step back and say, yeah, this guy isn't the same anymore. And Kendrick definitely saw all of that, which makes this current fallout even clearer. And he kept trying to smear Dr. Dre's name in every way he could, saying things like Kanye did more for him in 2 weeks than Dre did for him his entire career. But when you really think about it, besides giving Game the Beat for Dreams on one of the best tracks of the 2000s, what exactly did Kanye do for him? Meanwhile, Dre is the one who placed the game right next to 50 Cent and Eminem, putting him inside a musical powerhouse that most artists would have dreamed of joining. And when we look at events like the Pop Out, the difference becomes even more obvious. The game wasn't there, and then we found out he wasn't even invited, while Dr. Dre came out as the legend he is, performing Still DRE, then teaming up with Kendrick for California Love, and even setting the tone for Not Like Us. Dre stood center stage as the true gatekeeper of West Coast history. When you look at the legacy Kendrick has been building, the unity, the energy, the lineage, Dre fits right into that story. The game, on the other hand, stands in the way of all of it with his tension toward Dre. His constant issues with Dre clash directly with the unity Kendrick's been fighting for on the West. And honestly, when we go back to the 2022 Super Bowl halftime show, that's where the shift seemed to start. The game decided to go against Dre right after learning he wasn't invited to perform. That moment clearly triggered him because ever since then he's been making wild claims and disrespecting someone who literally helped build his foundation. And as a side note, that whole 2022 halftime show deserves its own deep breakdown someday because it quietly created some of the biggest divides we're still seeing today in hip-hop. The energy, the choices, the performers, all of it fed into tensions that have only grown since then. So when you connect all of these moments, it becomes clear why the game's behavior feels so out of place. He alienated Dre, the West Coast, and now he's trying to twist stories about Kendrick too. And that's exactly why Kendrick's people aren't staying silent anymore. There were real ripple effects from that Super Bowl moment, and honestly, a lot of what we saw during the Kendrick versus Drake situation can be traced back to that period. But even now, there's still so much unresolved tension between all the major players involved. A lot of rappers had their egos checked in that era, and some of them never recovered from it. You had 50 Cent dealing with his own situation, which is a whole separate story and could be its own video. And then you had The Game, who wasn't invited at all, and that's when his attitude toward Kendrick really shifted. When the Drake situation started happening, The Game's frustration with Kendrick suddenly made a lot more sense because he was already carrying resentment from being left out of that historic moment alongside Dre. And on top of that, The Game's frustration with Dr. Dre turned into him projecting jealousy toward Kendrick Lamar. When you look at the full lineage of hip-hop, the major figures who led their eras and were always at the center of the culture, so many of the issues we're seeing right now connect right back to that exact moment in time. It was a turning point for a lot of these artists, in the best way for some and the worst way for others. And when you look at how The Game damaged his relationship with Dr. Dre on his own, it becomes even clearer. But what makes it even more surprising is that The Game is one of the only West Coast artists, and someone who literally passed the torch to Kendrick, who ended up taking a quiet but very obvious pro-Drake position during the Kendrick versus Drake clash. For the West Coast, that was almost disrespectful, especially because Kendrick represents the same coast the game came from, and what made it even more confusing was how the game tried to play it off like he was neutral, acting like he didn't want to create division or pick sides, but in reality, that passive stance was basically siding with Drake. To this day, the game still shows more support for Drake than for Kendrick, even though Kendrick was the one carrying the West Coast forward during the biggest rap battle of this generation. And seeing the game drift so far away from his own region while boosting Drake, that's something a lot of people in the culture never forgot, and it explains even more of the tension we're seeing now. And in the moment where the West Coast was truly tested, we saw something eye-opening. A lot of the music world clearly didn't want to see the West Coast sitting at the top. For whatever reason, people outside the region acted like the West shouldn't be leading anything. So when the game decided to lean toward the Canadian artist instead of standing with Kendrick, the same Kendrick he once passed the torch to, it stunned a lot of people on the coast. Because Kendrick wasn't just some random rapper. He was the next name in a legendary line. Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, The Game, and then Kendrick stepping in as the new face of a culture-shifting movement that changed hip-hop forever. Kendrick represented the progression of an entire region, and The Game once played a part in that story. So seeing him suddenly drift towards someone outside the West shocked a lot of fans. And now that he's out here telling stories that don't match reality, acting like someone who's bending the truth just to get attention, it's no surprise why Kendrick's people are speaking about him the way they are. They're not holding back anymore, because this pattern has been going on for too long. What makes all of this even tougher to witness is how far the game has fallen. This isn't some artist who never had success. This is someone who once stood tall for the West. And seeing that decline play out in real time is rough, because The Game wasn't one of the people who faded without ever having greatness. He truly had something special. From 2005 to 2015, he delivered an incredible run. Classic albums, high-impact records, some of the best music of the 2000s and early 2000s. Projects like the Red Album were considered among the strongest works of their time. Back then, he wasn't just another rapper. He was the face of the West Coast until Kendrick rose up. So to see him go from that, a respected artist carrying the region forward, to someone who now spends his time supporting the Canadian artist more than his own coast, while also promoting questionable ventures and causing confusion online, it really shows how much has changed. It's a dramatic fall that nobody expected, and it explains exactly why Kendrick's camp has lost all patience with him. This whole situation is honestly a sad fall to witness, and once again, it shows something deeper about the inner dynamics of the West Coast. The Game simply couldn't handle someone like Kendrick. Kendrick wasn't wrapped up in the same circles The Game considered real. And he wasn't moving with that tough guy image The Game thinks every rapper needs. Even The Game himself admitted Kendrick was more of a humble, focused, nice guy. And that alone seemed to bother him. Because seeing Kendrick rise the way he did, without following the usual industry rules, without playing into the same street-focused energy, and without trying to impress anyone, broke a lot of rappers mentally. Kendrick didn't try to become part of those inside groups. The Game swore were necessary to be respected, and when Kendrick still climbed to the top, it shattered the beliefs of artists who thought you had to move a certain way to be seen as legitimate. That's really what pushes so many rappers to lose their composure when Kendrick's name comes up. They start acting out of character, saying wild things, and suddenly creating tension out of nowhere. Because for years, they followed every trend, did everything the industry asked, tried to fit into every box, yet they still couldn't reach the level Kendrick reached by simply being himself. Imagine how frustrating that must feel for them. The biggest rapper in the world, the most important name in the entire space, became that by dropping thoughtful music and staying true to his message. Like Kendrick said on the Mask Off remix, a conscious rapper went commercial while only making conscious albums. That line alone explains why so many people in the rap world secretly struggle with him. And I think one of the big reasons Kendrick's people finally spoke out and publicly shut The Game down is because The Game wasn't just sharing stories, he was using Kendrick's name to boost attention for himself. He tried to big bro Kendrick by telling these stories, acting like he built him or guided him, all while pushing a new project he wants people to pay attention to. Because every time The Game is about to drop something, this pattern shows up. If we go back to his last album from 2022, Drillmatic, that project turned into a whole cloud-chasing moment where he tried to center everything around tension with Dr. Dre and Eminem. It felt like he needed controversy to get people to look his way again. So now, seeing him pop up with more stories Kendrick's circle says aren't even real, right as he's preparing to release more music, it becomes pretty clear what he's doing. And that's exactly why Kendrick's team decided they'd had enough and finally called it out publicly. And he leaned heavily on that 10-minute Eminem diss track, a track he swore would change rap forever. As the main selling point for the whole album, he tried to hype it up like it would expose Eminem, shake the industry, and make everyone tune in. But in the end, it didn't lead to anything major, and the moment faded away fast. The wild part is that Drillmatic actually had a lot of solid music on it. The Game is still a skilled rapper. That's what makes watching this decline so frustrating. Even though a lot of Drake supporters hype him up simply because he positions himself against Kendrick, The Game is the one who actually uses disses the same way people claim Kendrick and Drake do, dropping them just to create buzz and pull in listeners. And right now we're seeing the same pattern repeat itself. The Game has a new project coming, his first Gangsta Grillz tape ever, and of course it's with DJ Drama. One of the records just dropped and it's brand new, but it's obvious he's gearing up to use every bit of this drama to get extra eyes and ears on the project. Because let's be real, whenever The Game is in the middle of some kind of tension, he turns it into marketing. And with everything going on between him, Kendrick, and all these old stories resurfacing, it's clear he's about to plant his flag on one side, the side opposite of Kendrick, just to get attention. And the saddest part, by doing that, he's once again distancing himself from the very coast that raised him. After everything the West Coast gave him, after the lineage he was part of, he's choosing to lean into controversy instead of standing with the culture he once represented. There's really no other way to put it. He keeps disappointing the place he came from, all for attention he shouldn't even need. When you look at this through the lens of hip-hop and the West Coast legacy The Game was once part of, it's clear he's standing on the wrong side of everything. And it's genuinely sad to watch, because even though Game is still a skilled rapper, seeing him rely on these antics instead of his actual talent just shows how far things have fallen for him. And from Kendrick Lamar's point of view, it must be frustrating to watch. No matter how much ability The Game still has, he keeps leaning into clown-like behavior just to stay in the conversation. That's the part that really pushes Kendrick and his people away, because they see through all of it. And here we are today, seeing that exact shift play out in real time. The moment Kendrick decided to step forward, shake up the whole rap game, and make major statements, he knew one thing for sure. This chapter was always going to expose anyone who was pretending, acting fake, or standing against him behind the scenes. And just like we're witnessing right now, those same people still haven't been able to move past what Kendrick accomplished. That's the situation we have today. Let me know what you think about Kendrick Lamar and his people finally showing that they do not rock with The Game anymore. It's a huge moment, it's an interesting moment, and it's setting the tone for everything happening right now. And listen, today is a big day, and the drops aren't stopping anytime soon. More content is coming your way, so stay ready because it's about to get exciting. But before you go, if you want to see what happened right before all this, well, Drake recently reacted in a wild way to Childish Gambino after Gambino called him out at Camp Flog Gnaw. Drake and his team's reaction was unbelievable, and it shows exactly how strange things are getting in the rap world right now. You're definitely going to want to check out that story next. Make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.